Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Sunday, May 24th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Well, it's Sunday, so it's Rules Retrospective Day, and we're going to continue our look at the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Initiative and Combat System, compiled by DM Prata, a document that David M. Prata put together. This is version 2.2. Published in March of 2006. So it's almost a decade and a half old that he put this together, and he did a pretty good job of it too. Let's have a look at where we left off. This week we got through page 6 of 20. We were looking at step 7, and it's a long one, so we thought we'd leave off until this week. Step 7 begins, generally, the results of whatever actions are decided upon by the party with initiative are determined first, followed by the results of whatever actions are decided upon by the party which lost the initiative. Ties usually indicate that attacks occur simultaneously. Special cases are listed below. We go into A, multiple attack routines. When one or more creatures involved in combat are permitted to use their attack routines twice or more often during the round, then the following initiative determinants are employed. 1. When the attack routine may be used twice, then allow the side with this advantage to attack first and last, with those members of its group who have this advantage. A, lowercase. If it is possessed by both parties, the initiative roll determines which group strikes first and third, which group strikes second and last. Lowercase b, if one or both groups have members allowed only one attack routine, it will always fall in the middle of the other attacks. The order determined by dicing for initiative when necessary. So the example given is Eric's cousin squares off against Certain the cleric. As a 7th level fighter, Eric's cousin has an attack rate of 3 for every 2 rounds. So he can attack twice in the first round. Certain has but 1 attack, so it would come between the 2 attacks of his opponent. If Tensor were to drop in and cast haste on Certain, the cleric, then they would both have 2 attacks and would need to dice for initiative. Number 2. If one party has the ability to employ its attack routines thrice, then the other party dices for initiative to see if it or the multi-routine group strikes first in the midpoint of the round. The example given. If, on the other hand, and this continues on from the previous example, if, on the other hand, Eric's cousin, being a 16th level magic user, cast haste on himself, then he could attack 3 times per round and Certain only 1. They would need to roll for initiative to determine who struck first in the middle of the round, but Eric's cousin would always attack first and last. Number 3. Extrapolate for routines which occur 4 or more times in a round by following the method above. Number 4. Note that a routine is the attack or attacks usual to the creature concerned, i.e. a weapon or weapons for a character, a claw-claw-bite routine for a bear with incidental damage assessed as it occurs, the hug for example. A 12th level fighter is allowed attack routines twice in every odd-numbered melee round, for example, and this moves up to 3 per round if a haste spell is cast upon the fighter. Number 5. This rule applies to multiple missile attacks as well as to multiple melee attacks. Thus, a longbow rate of fire 2 will generally fire first and last in the round. This, of course, applies in the missile phase, so keep that in mind. I don't think he quite clarifies on that score. So if somebody has one missile attack and somebody is using, say, a longbow with a rate of fire of 2, the longbow firing first and last, the other in the middle, right? B. Again, this is part of step 7. And we're into B, which is charge. Normal melee is not possible when the opponents begin the round over 1 inch, 10 foot, 10 yards outdoors, distant. A round must be spent closing. Alternatively, the attacker may choose to charge. This action brings the charging party into combat on the charge round, provided movement rate plus bonus allows this. 1. Movement rate of charging creatures. Lowercase a. Outdoors, charging bipeds receive a 1/3 movement bonus. Charging quadrupeds receive a 1/2 movement bonus. Lowercase b. Indoors, movement rate for all charging creatures is doubled. Lowercase c. Encumbered creatures may not charge. So you've got to be at your full base movement rate to be able to charge. If you're encumbered at all, you may not. You find that Dungeon Master's Guide, page 66. It's all part of that there. Number 2. Armor class of charging creatures. Lowercase a. There is no dexterity bonus allowed for charging creatures. B. Creatures with no dexterity bonus become 1 armor class worse. And lowercase c. There is no penalty to AC 10 creatures for charging, however. So you can't go below 10. You can't fall below 10. Number 3. Melee at end of charge. Lowercase a. Initiative is not checked at the end of charge movement. Lowercase b. The opponent with the longer weapon, reach, attacks first. Lowercase c. Charging creatures gain +2 on their to hit dice if they survive any opponent attacks which occur first. Number 4. To determine the timing of a charge attack versus an opposed spellcaster, compare the segments of the movement required to the casting time of the spell. They give an example. Bigby nervously tries to complete his grasping hand spell as the giant charges at him. The spell... let me take a moment here. Article Justicar. Subscribe. Thank you so much. Yes, very nice. Good morning. How are you? Lost Nomad is here too. How are you, friend? Good to see you both. Very much appreciate it. I'll keep going. Number 4, to determine the timing of a charge attack versus an opposing spellcaster, compare the segments of movement required to the casting time of the spell. Let's get into that example. Bigby nervously tries to complete his grasping hand spell as the giant charges at him. Are we nervous? I'm nervous for him. The spell requires 7 segments to cast. The giant moves at 120, 12 inches, which is doubled to 240, 24 inches, or 24 feet per segment indoors. He has 200 feet to close and will do so in 200 divided by 24, 9 segments. Bigby will get his spell off after all. So 9 segments to close that 200 feet for the giant charging. However, only 7 segments to cast the spell. So the grasping hand pops off before the giant gets to him. Now we're into C, spellcasting. Even when a spellcaster has won the initiative, it is possible for an opponent's attack to occur before the completion of and thus disrupt the spell. Number 1. If combat is spell versus spell, the spell with the shorter casting time will be completed first, with the initiative result breaking ties in casting time. Bigby and Rigby just cannot take the name jokes anymore. They decide to settle the matter with a magical duel. The winner will deal with Digby and the others afterwards. Bigby decides to get it over with quickly and starts casting Meteor Swarm, 9 segments. Rigby, on the other hand, opens with a Flame Strike, 8 segments. Initiative is irrelevant. Rigby's spell will go off before Bigby's. If Bigby had been using his Clenched Fist spell, also 8 segments, then initiative would have decided which spell was completed first. Number 2. If the spellcaster is being attacked by a melee weapon with a speed factor rating, use the following procedure to determine when the weapon strikes. Lowercase a. When the attacker wins initiative, the weapon will always strike prior to spell completion. Lowercase b. When initiative is tied, a straight comparison of weapon speed factor to spell casting time will determine which occurs first. Simultaneous results are possible. Lowercase c. When the attacker loses initiative, subtract the attacker's losing initiative die from the weapon speed factor, treating negative numbers as positive, and compare the result to the spellcasting time to determine which occurs first. Again, simultaneous results are possible. Article Justicar chimes in, I always wanted to incorporate speed factors for weapons, but never applied it consistently. You know, that's very true for probably a lot of groups, that speed factors was easier to simply ignore than to utilize on a consistent, regular, universal basis. So I'm certainly guilty of that myself. I will occasionally adjudicate a situation where, okay, Game of Thrones, great scene. Arya returns to Winterfell and chides Brienne into sparring with her. Big sword, little dagger, ends with the two of them right at each other's throat. But I think we've all pretty safely assumed that Arya would have gotten the quicker, smaller blade in faster, because it's just a quicker weapon, right? Here's an example they use here. The two spellcasters have closed to melee range. Bigby starts casting Power Word Kill, 1 segment. Rigby attacks with his Staff of the Serpent. If Rigby wins initiative, he will strike first. If initiative is tied, the 1 segment spell will beat the speed factor 4 staff. As it turns out, Bigby wins initiative 6-4. the speed factor 4 minus his losing die roll 4 equals 0. So he actually beats the one segment spell. He still needs to score a hit though. So there you go. We move on. Number 3. If the spellcaster is being attacked by missile weapons or by natural weaponry without a speed factor rating, such as a monster's claw, bite, use the following procedure to determine when the attacker strikes. Lowercase a. When the attacker wins initiative, the attack will always strike prior to spell completion. Lowercase b. When the attacker loses initiative, or when initiative is tied, the attack will occur on the segment indicated by the caster's initiative die. Compare this to the spellcasting time to determine which occurs first. Simultaneous results are possible. There's an example. The duel comes to a grinding halt when an out-of-control air elemental turns on Bigby. It starts to attack, while Bigby tries to cast Protection from Evil, 10-foot radius, 3 segments, to keep it away from him. Bigby wins initiative 4-1, so the elemental's attack will come on segment 4 after the spell is completed. Bigby is safe for the moment. Number 4. When the attacker has multiple attack routines, only the first attack has an opportunity to disrupt a spell unless the spell requires a full round to cast. And there is an example. While Rigby takes the opportunity to cast Cure Light Wounds on himself, 5 segments, Bigby's loyal archers begin firing on him. The timing of their first volley will be determined by initiative. Rigby wins initiative 3-2, but that means that the first volley of arrows arrive in segment 3 before the completion of the spell. If the spell is not disrupted, his spell will take effect in segment 5. The second volley of arrows will strike thereafter. Number 5. Number 5. A magic user may cast 2 cantrips in a single round. Now this, let's be clear, is footnoted at 117 Gygax Unearthed Arcana, page 45. So keep in mind, I'm all for clarifications that come from Dragon Magazine for any source you're using to run your game. But if you're not using Unearthed Arcana, you do have to back this out and use just what's presented in the core book. You can adjudicate in unclear situations based on knowledge from sources you're not using, because quite often sources like Unearthed Arcana include rules and clarifications which help smooth out rules that came in the core 3 books. And certainly, if you were to think something through without the advantage of having Unearthed Arcana, you may well adjudicate in the same manner with the same result. So there's really nothing wrong with utilizing a book you're not using in-game to help you determine how to adjudicate rules which are unclear. I certainly, when I'm running a first edition game, tend to stick with just the core rule books. I do, however, invite and encourage anyone who's running a Lexfire22, anyone who's running a magic user who wants to borrow spells out of Unearthed Arcana to use that as a quote-unquote basis for a spell they are researching and inventing themselves. The nice part about that is, of course, most stuff that comes out of Unearthed Arcana has been tested. It was meant to be included in first edition by people as an expansion of the rules. So it's, of course, formatted in the same way. It doesn't often overlook things that you'd want to consider if you were allowing somebody to make up a spell within a campaign. So it's a pretty useful way to allow players to add in additional material without full on saying, excuse me, that something like Unearthed Arcana is now part of the rules you're using. Let me jump over here into the stream chat where Lexfire22 says, I just started using weapon and spell speed more often now that Fantasy Ground supports the 2E rule set. Each player declares their action that round. We roll initiative. If using weapon or spell roll speed, if using weapon or spell roll speed initiative, if just movement roll core initiative. Ah, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, that's so in some cases you use one, in some cases you use the other, depending on the matchup, essentially, or what segment, what type of action is being focused on. I get what you're saying there. Yeah, it's neat that that gets incorporated. Players lean toward faster weapons now. Not a bad idea. I mean, it's a way of distinguishing. Let's face it, if we're looking at original Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, where we were and Chainmail, where we were all beholden to the mighty D6, and that's all weapons. All weapons would do. Then certainly there's not a lot of, should we say, narrative flavor differences between the various weapons, or there's not a lot of mechanical differences between the various weapons, though there is narrative flavor differences. So it incorporating those additional factors definitely increase the variety that you're going to see in game, and you're going to have to make, as a player character, as a player of player characters, you're going to have to make some serious choices that will impact both the mechanics of the game and how things will play out narratively in games for those who like to focus on that. I will say, though, I should mention Lexfire, though, this is a description of first edition. Where are we at here? We're on page 8, down by 6, 7, and 8, right? So this is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Initiative and Combat Tables, but it really does focus mainly on first, right? If we go down to the list of sources at the end, Rogues Gallery, and yeah, this is worth jumping in on once in a while to remind people with each video, right? Sorcerer's Scroll, the Dragon, 79, 79, 83. Monster Manual 2 is one of the later ones. Unearthed Arcana 85, of course. Temple of Elemental Evil had some stuff that will be used as a source in here. That's 85. And 85, updating the Dragon again. 86, the Wilderness Survival Guide, appears to be the latest source that they use for this document. So we're really talking first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, even though the title of the document really just flat out says Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, rather than mentioning that it's mainly first. Where were we? Page 8? Yeah, here we go. Let's take a little look ahead. Here we go. D3. Okay, so we get to 11. We're into examples of melee. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We are on page 8, weapon speed factor, 6, 7, and 8. Let's do this. Number 6 is where we were, right? The spellcaster cannot use his or her dexterity bonus to avoid being hit during spellcasting. Doing so interrupts the spell. Now that's an interesting wording there, right? Because it says he cannot use his or her dexterity bonus to avoid being hit. And then it puts this caveat on the end as if it was a choice because it would interrupt the spell. It's as if they're saying, well, you can, but it would interrupt the spell, rather than saying he just flat out can't. Right? So I don't know about the wording on that one there. We've got 122. We've got Dungeon Master Guide, page 65. That may be something worth looking into a little more deeply at some point, because I think this almost contradicts itself. It may just be saying this is why you cannot do it. See, even that doesn't quite work for me. All right, well, let's move on. Number 7. Any successful attack or non-saved against attack upon the spellcaster interrupts the spell. That's pretty clear. Number 8. The above procedures for resolving the timing of attacks against spellcasters also apply to opponents using magical devices with specific activation times, such as rods, staffs, and wands. These functions, however, will not be automatically disrupted by a successful attack unless the wielder is slain or otherwise incapacitated. So, here's the example they give. Completely out of spells at this point and low on hit points, Bigby resorts to his Wand of Cold. Frost, brackets frost. He uses 2 charges to create a cone of cold. This function has an activation time of only 2 segments. Rigby tries to hit Bigby with his hammer, plus 2. Initiative is tied, so the weapon speed factor 4 is compared to the activation time of the wand, 2. The cone of cold will go off before Rigby can try to hit Bigby. Even if Rigby had 1 initiative and struck first, the cone of cold would take effect unless the blow incapacitated Bigby. So, for example, you've got a Vorpal sword, which cuts off someone's head. The wand of cold, for example, here is not going to continue to function just because you got it started. So, Article Justicar says, yeah, I read that as the MU having the opportunity to dodge, but it will definitely interrupt the spell. The spellcaster is essentially caught flat-footed with no AC bonus. Yeah, it's we're using some terminology from later editions, of course, in that interpretation, but fair to say that that is the gist of the counterintuitive way that is described in number 6. So that's something worth looking into, page 65 of the DMG, but I'll tell you what, we're at the half-hour mark, so we'll pick this back up on page 9 with weapon speed factor next Sunday, and we will just say that today, I should mention the second set of patches. We got the drawing tomorrow. Will be announced the winner, the giveaway winner, so we'll send that out. Let me do something real quick while we're on here, which is to make sure that Lexfire22, yep, George, got you on there. Todd, I've got you on there. Article Justicar, Lost Nomad, Mark, yep, I've got you on for that was for week 8. So let me grab the 3 of you off of here. and put you in, since today is Sunday, we're actually starting a new week. You guys are getting your week 9 names on there early. There we go. All right. Real good. Glad I made sure I took care of that before we got off here. Do a save there. And you know what? I should mention week 9, right? Well, you know what? I've got you 3 guys in here. How do you guys feel about a DVD of the 13th Warrior being next week's, not this week's prize, week 9's prize, starting this week? I hope that sounds like a good one for some of you, at least, because that is what is up this week. Also, today, tomorrow, don't forget, Con of Champions. Heck yeah, good. I'm glad. And I'll be doing a board game that's full up. But there is a great thing going on at 11 today. If you're part of Con of Champions, you know there's something else going on. Let me just have a look at the schedule. Bill Petrosky is running a seminar, and this is all Central Time, 11 a.m., starting and ending a campaign. We'll talk about GM Pro Tips and specifically focus on how to create compelling and wondrous beginnings and powerful conclusions to your tabletop RPG campaign. And he's got 20 some odd people that'll be watching it, including myself. It's one of the many seminars that are available, virtual seminars available at Con of Champions. So if you have the chance, Con of Champions, go sign up. It's only $2 to get a inexpensive ticket, and then these all events you sign up for are free. You can sign up and get in there. Bill Petrosky starting and ending a campaign, 11 a.m. That's a good one. So go check that out. I'll be running my first edition games tomorrow. I think they went pretty well yesterday. A couple of tech issues, but to be expected. So many of us are very, very new to virtual tabletops. I'm not surprised when we have the occasional stumbling block. But we overcome them. We have fun. I think we had a great time in each of those 3 adventures. The rest of the week, Monday, tomorrow, of course, the weekly news and the giveaway announcement. Tuesday, cartography and world building. Campaign discussion with a focus on Grimwald, my own campaign setting, on Wednesday. Crafting and painting. I'll hopefully be finishing up the catapults, the WizKids catapults, on Thursday. On Friday, we'll be back to building some virtual tabletop adventures. Saturday, of course, cartoon reviews from a DM perspective. We're going to be jumping into Conan the Adventurer animated series. I think 86 that began. We're taking a little break from the D&D animated series since we're done with the first disc, 9 of 27 episodes. We'll get back into that a little bit later, but we're going to switch over to some Conan for a while and have some fun with that. Also, next Sunday, Rules Retrospective. We'll pick it up with those weapon speeds. And then that'll be another week under our belt. So much great fun. I want to thank everybody who took the time to pop in over here on the stream chat and following the channel on Twitch. I want to mention to those of you catching up with this on YouTube, please do subscribe and also give us a thumbs up or even a thumbs down if you feel like it. It all feeds the algorithms, and it actually counts the same for us. And it's good to have feedback, positive and negative, so we do appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, once again. You guys have a great day, a great week. Go support Con of Champions. It's well worth doing. Bye-bye.